If you've been concerned about the Colts, I've got good news. They've got a get-right game sitting right in front of them if they want it, and then they get to coast right into the bye week. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. What's up, everybody? This is Jake Arthur of horseshoehuddle.com, Brownsburg resident, home of the 2024 6A football state champion Bulldogs. First time in 40 years. No big deal. No big deal. Congratulations to the Bulldogs. But today we are here to put a wrap up on our coverage of the Colts and Patriots. If you didn't already check out my crossover Thursday episode with Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots, be sure to check that out. But this is a big one for the Colts. Number one, because pretty much they're in win now mode. They have to win pretty much everything over their final 5 games if they want to get into the postseason. If they can get a win this week, they get to go into their bye week next week, feeling fine, getting a little bit of rest. And the rest is key because they definitely need it right now. So in terms of injuries, we'll start with the good news. They get Bernhard Raimann back for the first time in a couple weeks, so that's good. But then let me tell you, everybody who's banged up. So guys who are out this week, wide receiver Josh Downs, who has essentially been the team's leading receiver ever since he really started to hit his stride early in the season, leading the team in receptions there. Ashton Dulin is also out. Questionable is Alec Pierce. So your second and third technical receivers behind Michael Pittman Jr. on the depth chart. Those guys are either out or questionable. Alec Pierce was able to practice Friday, and he's been on the injury report a couple times during the season. So I'm not overly concerned about him since he was able to practice on Friday. But obviously you'll see an increased role for A.D. Mitchell in this one. He has been Josh Downs' direct replacement anytime that Downs has been off the field at the slot receiver. With Dulin out, so you're probably going to see Anthony Gould active for this game, I would imagine. And then either Laquan Treadwell or DJ Montgomery pulled up from the practice squad. So Treadwell got the nod earlier in the season when Michael Pittman Jr. was out. So that might be the move. But it really depends. We saw DJ Montgomery come in a bit late last season. So it just seems like stylistically in the game plan, whatever they're trying to accomplish is probably what they'll go ahead and do with either of those guys. Offensive line, again, I mentioned Bernhard Raimann is in, but it gets a little bit worse with the injuries. So you're looking at starting center Tanner Bortolini is out with an injury. He'll be replaced by Danny Pinter, and then Braden Smith has a personal matter, so he is going to be out as well. He missed some practice time last week with that too. But yeah, he'll be out. So you got to imagine it might be Matt Gonzalez on the right side. We have seen Blake Freeland get the nod at the right side before, but now that Bernhard Raimann is back, maybe they kick Gonzalez over to the right side. Gonzalez certainly has been more favored by the team and the coaches when it comes to being that swing tackle and the next guy up. So my guess is it's going to be Matt Gonzalez, but we've also been kind of anticipating a change at right guard this week. So let's just assume Dalton Tucker is not the right guard this week. I think the Braden Smith situation and the Tanner Bortolini situation probably muddies things for the Colts a little bit because obviously if you're shuffling around the offensive line, you want to have everybody healthy so that you can actually put together the top 5 that you want to. We kind of thought it might be Gonzalez at right guard if Raimann was back, but with Braden Smith being out, it kind of forces your hand a little bit. So maybe it's Matt Gonzalez at right tackle. Maybe they call up Mark Glowinski later today, Saturday, for this one. We'll see what they want to do. Maybe this is just the week they decide they don't want to mess with it because there are other guys banged up. We'll see. Tanner Bortolini, after Ryan Kelly comes back, hopefully in a couple weeks from being on IR, there was just a lot of things they could do that I don't know if they'll want to mess with it quite yet. But certainly if you kind of read between the lines how Shane Steichen's been speaking really ever since Sunday postgame last week, I would anticipate a change coming at right guard as soon as this week. It makes all the sense in the world without him just outright coming out and saying it. I think that's probably going to happen. And then, so the keys to this one, this to me feels like a game where if the Colts can run the ball, I certainly think they're going to. They seem hell-bent on trying to get it done. Shane Steichen on Wednesday said that's like a huge focus of them is really getting the run game going this week. It seems like an opportunity for Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor to just team up and take this thing over. It might be a low-scoring game. It might be a thing where the Colts, it's a quick game because they just run the ball 40 times, whatever. But I just feel like this is going to be a really run-heavy approach. I'm feeling optimistic that if they do make the change on the offensive line this week, that they can get the run game going. Again, it's going to be very difficult without two of your other normal starters in there. So we'll see how it goes. But I think they definitely want to run the ball. If they can do that, I think the passing game, big plays can be kind of birthed off that through play action. When you establish the run, you kind of keep New England's defense on their toes, gets to play extra stuff. If A.D. Mitchell plays a much bigger role, Alec Pierce, if he's out there, I think those are some guys that could maybe be beneficiaries downfield in this one. So I think the Colts should do a heavy dose of running the ball. Very curious to see what it looks like now that A.D. Mitchell is replacing Josh Downs, because we've seen him get an increased role when Michael Pittman Jr. was out. So we'll see what his usage was. He responded last time with the biggest game of his career. So this is certainly an opportunity for him. I don't really want to put anything on the tight ends right now, because I think if the tight ends were capable of really being used heavily in the passing game, it would have happened by now. So Michael Pittman Jr., if this is a physically good game for him, we'll see. You never really know. He doesn't really ever know going into game day. But A.D. Mitchell, being a healthy guy in this one, seems like someone who could be, maybe he notches 70, 80 yards again. But yeah, I think if the Colts can have some sort of semblance of a run game, now mind you, New England did just get Christian Barmore back recently, but I'll get into it in a minute. They've got a million guys banged up as well. This just feels like in late season situations when there's a ton of injuries, your star players really can take over a game. And it's a bad team in the New England Patriots against a team that I don't want to call the Colts a bad team, but they've not been good or great. But they have the better players in this one. And it just feels like Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, just a heavy dose of them in the run game. If they can get some things going on the outside, that'd be great, because they just keep trying to run them into the teeth of the defense, and it hasn't been working because that offensive line cannot create any space in the run game. So if they can get some things going on the outside, great. Kyle Duggar banged up in this one. Jabril Peppers coming back from the commissioner's exempt list, but he's on the injury report as well. They've got a ton of guys in the defensive front seven on the injury report. Again, I'll get into the specifics of that in our final segment. But yeah, how banged up the Colts are, it makes me feel better that the Patriots are arguably even more banged up in terms of my optimism for what the Colts want to achieve. So that's about it for the offense in this one. We just got to hope that they can finally establish the run. Coming up next, we're going to discuss the defense and what that looks like against New England's young stud rookie quarterback. All right, football season is still with us, and if you're watching me, then I can assume that you have tried to get out to a football game either this year or recently. It's just really fun. I obviously have a bird's eye view every home game for the Colts up there at the press box, so I don't totally get the fan experience like you guys. But anytime I've attended like a college game or a high school game, I've been up to South Bend to catch a Notre Dame game before, Tom Zbikowski's senior day. It was now a core memory for me. But watching a football game, especially like in a college stadium, that atmosphere is just incredible. And when it comes to who I rely on for really any of my events, not just football games, basketball games, what have you. Game Time's really got it covered. Because when it comes to live events for me this year, I've really been leaning into the concerts. My wife and I have been doing a lot of live shows this year, certainly more than we have in years past. But yeah, it's all about Game Time. They've got a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks just filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of ticket options. Again, I've used Game Time a million times this year, it feels like. At least me or people in my network. I've literally been on Game Time while at a live event, buying tickets to the next thing my group wants to go to. So yeah, anytime my friends are together and we're talking about going to see some concert or been to a couple comedy shows this year as well, I say, go create an account on Game Time. Use the Locked On Colts discount deal. Get your discount and then just keep using them anytime you go to the well and buy tickets. Game Time Picks, again, their curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, whatever. They've got their panoramic views from the seat beforehand, so you can make sure that your seats are pretty good and that you're not stuck behind some pillar. They've got the lowest price guarantee, which means they'll credit you 110% of the difference. If you find seats, another site, seats in that similar spot for a better price, that's how confident they are that you won't find that situation. And then a big one for me is the Game Time ticket coverage, which means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, let's talk about this defense. Okay, so I just seriously don't know what to think about this defense after the Lions game. We know how good the Lions are. They proved it again on Thanksgiving, even though they almost tried to give it up against the Bears. But no, this is like a historic scoring offense that the Colts were up against last week. Held them to 24 points, which is awesome. In a vacuum, that's awesome. It honestly gives you a fighting chance to win that game if your offense shows up as well. But despite giving up 24 points, it could have been even better. So PFF had the Colts with 15 missed tackles in that one, which resulted in 175 yards after the catch for the Lions and 110 rushing yards after first contact. So the Colts gifted them an entire game of offensive yardage just based on missed tackles, essentially. So obviously the New England Patriots offense is not the Lions offense. Drake May is an exciting player. He's very creative. He can get out and keep you alive when your offense is just lifeless because, again, he can buy time with his legs. He keeps his eyes downfield. He can make guys miss. As long as his receivers are out there and running their routes and coming back to the quarterback, Drake May can make something happen. But the problem for them is they can't block to save their lives, and they have guys banged up on the offensive line this week. PFF has New England rated as second to last in the league in pass blocking at 49.4, so they give up sacks. The Colts with that defensive line with DeForest Buckner back, they get sacks. They've been doing pretty well. So I think this is a simple recipe. To me, this does not seem like a complex game plan or like this is going to be some crazy game. I think as long as the Colts show up and take care of business and just like eliminate the mental mistakes and are fundamentally sound. Again, I hate sounding like a coach in this, but the Colts don't check off those boxes week after week. Like all the stuff that coaches try to pound in your head, they just don't do it. The fundamentals are not always there. We saw how sloppy they were with penalties last week, 10 penalties, 8 of them on offense. That's the kind of stuff that costs you wins. Maybe you don't beat the Lions last week, but you don't get absolutely wiped off the field like you wound up being. You could probably afford more of those mistakes in a game like this against the Patriots. But if you are just fundamentally sound, you just are where you're supposed to be and you do what you are supposed to do, this game should not be close remotely. The Colts have the better players. They should be able to win by multiple scores. Again, I'm not trying to say the Colts are some good team, but they have the better players. They have the better matchups in this one. Again, the defensive line that the Colts have, which is about as healthy as it's been all year right now, against an offensive line this bad in New England, which might be the worst one in the entire league, there's no reason that the Colts should not comfortably take care of business in this one. You know, their receivers are not all that great to write home about. Demario Douglas is one of their top receivers. He's banged up in this one. Hunter Henry is probably the biggest thing to worry about, which he's their top pass catcher against the most vulnerable area of the Colts defense, but they need to know that going in. I mean, the middle of the field for the Colts is where they're most vulnerable. Their linebackers don't cover particularly well, and sometimes they're not where they're supposed to be. And that has resulted in some decent performances by tight ends, and they're ripe for this one. But again, any sort of film study shows them that that is where New England should attack. So hopefully they be prepared. Hopefully this is a game where Gus Bradley really turns it on. There's the blitzes, lots of movement, disguising coverages like he's been so good at, getting better at all throughout the year. Because obviously nationally, Gus Bradley's kind of known as a stubborn, non-blitzing cover 3 guy, and he's really changed that this year. I think the Colts, as long as they don't take their opponent lightly, which they cannot afford to do, because again, they're in the playoff hunt, but not really super close right now. They're under 500. They cannot really afford to be taking anybody lightly. This has to be all gas, no brakes in this one, offensively and defensively. But coming up, guys, we're going to talk about final thoughts, look at just how banged up New England is. I'll give you my score prediction, and I'll just let you know how I think this one is going to turn out. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. FanDuel has the Colts as 2.5-point favorites in this one. Total point over-under at 42.5. I think they're kind of getting the vibe as well that this is kind of a low-scoring toss-up game. I'm definitely taking the Colts with the points in this one. I think I might even go above the 42.5 over-under. We'll see. But whatever you guys think, just visit FanDuel.com to join today and place your bets. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so final thoughts. Before you guys make your final thoughts on this one, and please throughout the day, drop them in your comments, let me just tell you how banged up New England is. They've only got one guy officially ruled out, offensive lineman Cole Strange, one of their high picks from recent years. Here's everyone that's questionable. Wide receiver Demario Douglas, he's near the top of the depth chart. Safeties Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar. Offensive lineman Badarian Lowe. Linebacker Sione Takitaki. Defensive end Dietrich Wise. Linebacker Anthony Jennings. Linebacker Christian Ellis. And defensive tackle, it's either Jaquelin Roy or Jacqueline Roy. But yeah, that's a lot of guys. And a lot of them are guys they depend on for quite a few snaps. So, again, to me, this has a feel of a game. It's late in the season. These teams are really banged up. Game plan be damned. It's just the best players that step up and win this game. And sometimes it winds up being handily. I don't feel like this time of year there's a lot of crazy results that happen in the NFL. It's usually the best team wins, especially if the teams are really banged up. With how Anthony Richardson has been performing as of late, I know the Colts lost last week, and the stat line of 11-28 is ugly, but we've told you all week how we don't really think that box score was indicative of his real performance. Receivers weren't where they were supposed to be. They were dropping balls. The offensive line was atrocious. Anthony was getting rid of the ball quickly still. So I think in this one, he continues to progress. against a defense that's not going to be performing as well as the Lions one was. I can't say the offensive line for the Colts is going to be performing much better because of how much they're missing. They're down to their third center now. Danny Pinter will be the starting center. At right tackle, we'll see probably Matt Gonzalez or Blake Freeland because Braden Smith's out. Bernard Ryman's back. That's great. And then we'll see who's going to be your right guard. Again, the injuries everywhere kind of muddy the waters a little bit. It doesn't allow me to speak confidently to what I think is going to be the lineup out there. But still, I mean, if you know you can't run the ball, which the Colts, we've seen them pull the ripcord. We know they'll abandon the run if they don't feel that like they can do it. I like them to be able to run the ball better as a game plan than passing the ball. Again, their safeties are hurt with Peppers and Duggar, even though Peppers has been suspended. But Christian Gonzalez is a really good player there in the secondary. I think it just totally dependent on if this is a game where guys show up, catch the ball, run the right routes at the right depth, and are on the same page as Anthony Richardson. That's just not something we have been able to, dependably rely on happening. And Anthony has caught a lot of flack for it, even though it's very much a group issue. We'll see how they can do that. On offense, I think the clear recipe is to run the ball. Again, heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor. Keep it going with Anthony Richardson. I like that they've incorporated more design runs for him. I think at this point, after you benched him and brought him back, the training wheels have got to be taken off. You got to use him like you drafted him to. You got to run him. You got to set up all those things. And I don't think there's any coincidence why it's looked better from him in the past couple of weeks. Obviously, it looks like he's taken the steps to really advance his preparation for game time. So that's part of it. But again, I think the way they use him has definitely helped as well. Defensively, it just all starts up front. DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Kwity Paye, Latu, Dayo Dengbo. This is the kind of game where they feast. Think back to the Panthers game last year. Think back to the Patriots game last year. This line's worse this year for the Patriots. So think of how ugly and low scoring it was last year. But the Patriots defense is worse now. Their offense is relatively the same. It's been bad, but the Colts offense should be better. So while they can hold New England, maybe not to the same low score because Drake May is better than Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, the Colts offense, I think, should be much more productive than what Gardner Minshew is able to do. I think I'm going to give the Colts my last bit of confidence on this one before they let me down on my picks. I'm going to say they win comfortably. I've got the Colts 27-13, a win on the road going into the bye week, a game under 500, and gearing up for their final 4 games. Luckily, they get the Broncos, which is their toughest remaining game. Broncos currently 7-5. They get them coming off the bye, but the Broncos are off the bye as well. But still, if they can manage to win that game, the other 4 games are the other 3 games, very, very winnable. We're not throwing in the towel on them this season. It's the playoffs are still very doable. All the other AFC teams in the chase don't seem to be interested in really grabbing the reins either. So the AFC is just a someone's got to win it type of thing. So why not the Colts? I know that seems far-fetched, but again, look at what the rest of the AFC is doing. It is possible. So that's it for us today, everybody. Thank you for making Locked On Colts your first listen today. Now for your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL, now with 2 shows every day. First, you're going to get the madman Tyler Rowland, who kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider, chit-chat with us, give us your thoughts, ask us about rumors or, the scuttlebutt coming from the locker room, whatever you want to hear. We've got how you can sign up for that directly there in the show notes. If you don't already, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. We're also on TikTok and Instagram now as well, so follow us there. Also, please subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We would love your ratings and reviews as well. And with that, you guys have a great day. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving break, and we'll see you again Sunday after the game.